the day he did that, he had 8 years, or basically 10 years as a prominent full-time receiver in Green Bay. And I took those 10 years and compared them to Andre Johnson, and was surprised and saddened to learn they had the same number of touchdowns.
Wow.
Like, Donald Driver was not the number one for a very long period of time. They had other weapons. Obviously, Favre threw the ball to everybody and had, different Sharp and Brooks and other guys
Great
that were in the mix.
ends.
And that was obviously not the case here in Houston. There's one guy, and we've long lamented his inability to find a connection with he and his quarterback, whoever it is, in the end zone, in the scoring area. And this year, 1,500 yards and 4 scores. Again, a number that's paltry for a man of his stature.
And how many touchdowns did Jacoby have just in the postseason?
I know. Anquan Boldin had a 4-touchdown regular season and a 4-touchdown postseason. Jacoby Jones had 3 touchdowns that are probably in the top 10 plays of this year's postseason. His return and his touchdown in the game yesterday, and obviously his touchdown at the end of the game against Denver. I heard people calling that the worst defensive play in postseason history, the touchdown against Denver. I think that's a bit harsh, but as I watched it, I was thinking the exact same thing. That's a floater. That's up there ready to be picked off. There's no way he's going to catch that. What are you doing, Raheem Moore? Where are you going? The ball's behind you. Touchdown, we lose in overtime about 45 minutes later. That's one of the most hard to believe plays of this year's postseason for sure, but Jacoby was involved in quite a few.
Kept Trendon Holiday from being the big man in that game instead. It ended up being the great play at the end and, of course, the double overtime win.
How do you lose a game with 2 returns for touchdowns from Holiday? But it also handed Holiday his first and only loss of the season. 5-0 with Houston, then 11-0 with Denver, and then 0-1 in the postseason. We were talking about Favre, and as I noted, Flacco's postseason performance. He's got 9 postseason wins. There's only 8 quarterbacks in NFL history with more. Favre is one of them. He won 13 of his 24 games, the most games started by anybody in the NFL, he along with Tom Brady. But 5 years in for Flacco, he's already got 13 starts. It seems like even though they're in cap hell and some of their players they're going to have to make tough decisions on, seems like they actually have enough youth and enough young talent, enough to build around him, even with his big fat contract that's coming. I expect more of the same from Flacco moving forward. More often than not, I expect the Ravens to be in the playoffs.
I would expect so. Harbaugh's a great coach. They've got some of the key players. They'll lose Ray Lewis and others. Who knows about Ed Reed? But you mentioned Flacco, Delaware Blue Hen. I got to meet the other Delaware Blue Hen, Rich Gannon. You're a man of vast knowledge, and I wanted to ask you this trivia question, time permitting. We know that Flacco didn't go first to Delaware. He transferred. Do you remember where he played and what quarterback was ahead of him at the school that forced his transfer to Delaware?
It's so obvious, and it's a quarterback school, and I've heard the story so many times, and I'm totally blanking on it.
Well, it's Pitt, and
I know who the other guy is, and it's embarrassing.
It is embarrassing.
It's so embarrassing.
Because right now he works as a financial rep at Northwestern Mutual in Pittsburgh. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but Tyler Pauco was the guy that forced Joe Flacco to transfer to Delaware and become the Blue Hand star, and of course on to Super Bowl glory.
Yeah, I wouldn't exactly call that a quarterback school, come to think of it. But I remember when he had to make the move, and a lot was made because the Texans were involved in his getting to Baltimore. The Ravens made that trade with the Texans on draft day to get to 18. Texans ultimately scored big with Dwayne Brown at 26, but a lot of people thought, well, trading up to get a quarterback happens all the time. Trading up to get a quarterback from Delaware happens never. And it was a risk. He's been the starter ever since. The guy's, I knock on wood, guy's never hurt, never missed a game. He's big, physical, capable of taking the hits, much better foot speed and overall speed than people think. That's what, if I were a Ravens fan, I would have been as frustrated by Joe Flacco in my city as my quarterback as maybe anybody in the NFL. What is it that he doesn't have? And maybe it was just in between the ears, because everything else is there. Great arm, good athlete, big body, see over the defense, appeared to be able to read defense very well. All these last 4 years, if I were a Ravens fan, I would have been pulling my hair out, and I would have been excited that they chose not to extend him before the season. I think that was the right call. Did it motivate him? Anybody's guess?
Hey, let's give Jim Caldwell some credit, too. I got to get in a Hawkeye reference when I can, but whatever he had going with Flacco, opening up the field, throwing the deeper balls, 12 passes of 40 or more yards, it worked.
Jim Caldwell, the timing on when Baltimore played, having no off week before the Indy game and all the way through the playoffs, with all the other jobs that were open, with his late addition as OC. He was obviously on staff there already, but took over for Cam Cameron. I guess that all played into it, but we said it at the time, thought he got a raw deal in Indianapolis. Peyton Manning can make coaches, obviously. He helped make him a Super Bowl guy. He helped Bates get a job this year by being in Denver and makes John Fox look great. But losing him and then kicking your coach to the curb because you gave him Curtis Painter, Dan Orlovsky, and ancient Kerry Collins, I thought that was a raw deal for Jim Caldwell. Next year, he'll have to wait a whole year, I imagine, but next year should be his last year in Baltimore.
He'll be back.
I would suspect. Brett Dolan sitting in for Matt Jackson. Adam Wexler here with you. Got a couple on the line already to finish up strong here on The Big Show coming back.